More about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Simon Evans, and in just a moment it'll be time for Headliners, the show where we take a look at what's in tomorrow's papers. But first, the latest news.
Good evening, I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says he's sorry for the things the government did not get right following the release of Sue Gray's report. It revealed a failure of leadership for allowing Number 10 gatherings during lockdown. Downing Street says Boris Johnson will publish an updated report once the Met probe concludes, after Sue Gray said her report is extremely limited. Boris Johnson told the Commons today he accepts Sue Gray's general findings in full.
I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. Mr. Speaker, I get it, and I will fix it.
The Foreign Secretary will miss a trip to Ukraine tomorrow after testing positive for COVID. Liz Truss confirmed she has the virus on Twitter this evening. She'd been due to fly to Kiev with the Prime Minister to meet the Ukrainian president amid fears of a Russian invasion. Boris Johnson is still scheduled to travel. Earlier, Ms Truss announced plans for legislation to give the government new powers to sanction individuals and businesses linked to Russia.
This will be the toughest sanction regime against Russia we have ever had, and it is the most radical departure in approach since leaving the European Union. Those in and around the Kremlin will have nowhere to hide. We will make sure that those who share responsibility for the Kremlin's aggressive and destabilising action will share in bearing a heavy cost.
A trial to extend school days in Wales has begun. 13 schools are to take part in the pilot, which adds an extra 5 hours to the school week. The 10-week trial is focused on supporting disadvantaged pupils and schools affected during the pandemic. A British woman who was found guilty of lying about being gang raped in Cyprus has had her conviction overturned. The woman, who's now 21, was given a 4-month suspended sentence in 2020 for public mischief after withdrawing her allegation. The Supreme Court of Cyprus found she'd not been given a fair trial. The Health Secretary is launching a consultation into whether it should be a legal requirement for health and social care workers to be vaccinated against coronavirus. Sajid Javid told the Commons mandatory vaccines for NHS workers was the right decision when it was made last year, when the Delta variant was dominant. He's asked for new advice from scientists now the milder Omicron variant is prevalent. Footballer Christian Eriksen has signed for Premier League club Brentford 7 months after suffering a cardiac arrest on the pitch while playing for Denmark. The 29-year-old, who's been fitted with an internal defibrillator, hasn't played since he collapsed at Euro 2020. The former Tottenham midfielder has signed a 6-month deal. You're up to date. This is GB News on TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Now it's back to headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, the show where the comedy circuit's finest discuss some of the best stories and indeed some of the worst stories of tomorrow morning. Joining me tonight are the omnipresent Nick Dixon and the omnisexual Ian Stone. That's what it says on the autocue. I have no idea what they're trying to imply there.
Well, omnipresent is right, because this is my third night in a row on GB. Many people are saying it's still not enough.
Do you feel that you're in some sort of leadership jockeying role now? Are you the Liz Truss of this organisation?
Well, who's the leader, Simon? Is it me versus you?
I guess it's me and Dominic, isn't it, who alternate in this seat. But,
right,
you know, I don't know what the equivalent would be. We're both Boris, one way or another.
I'm the dark horse candidate. I'm the John Major.
Yeah, but then, of course, I might try and attempt to take over the entire station, which would vacate this chair. And that would... I don't know. How do you feel, Ian? You're quite happy seeing out your sunset years.
I'm still revelling in my omnisexuality.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
It's normally known as pansexual, isn't it, if you fancy a bit of everything?
Oh, it's basically a bit of everything, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, OK.
I remember Salvador Dali described himself as the polymorphous pansexuality. That was his thing. He fancied everything, like chairs and baked beans and...
I said that. I'd have to get
rocks and cactus and dogs. Yeah.
Hang on a minute, Salvador. I'll be back with you in a second.
Polymorphous perversity. Let's see if it crops up in tonight's stories. We've got all the headlines to go through with you now very quickly. The Daily Mail have gone with now publish the whole damn thing, and also a little section inside with smart ways to age-proof your brain. I don't know whether that's a little dig at Boris Johnson, all the things he was been unable to remember. The Independent, failures of leadership. Boris looking rueful there, his naughty schoolboy look. Carrie has obviously supervised quite a severe haircut in order to make him look more apologetic for his wrongdoings, but I don't think it's going to wash with at least 50% of our panel this evening. The Guardian newspaper have failures of leadership. Tories turn on PM over Grey report, and doggy daycare, the sad return of working alone. I don't know whether we'll have time to get onto that important issue, certainly something that affects my household a good deal more than the Grey report. The Financial Times, let me see if I can ride past this headline without making a fool of myself. Johnson rejects calls to quit after Grey's scathing report on parties. And ex-BNP bankers' £2 million pay victory strikes rare blow for women in the city. We will be covering that. Quite extraordinary court case shortly. The Daily Telegraph, PM to ask Grey for new report. I don't like this one, can I have a new one? Ukraine call with Putin delayed as Macron gets in first. That sounds like a little bit of jockeying for position again. The Times have police investigate PM's 4 lockdown parties. There are some new parties which have cropped up and some other parties which have been described as not being appropriate to the Grey report. We also have how to be fit, do the bare minimum. Bit of a suggestive headline there for the Times on the getting your body back into shape after Christmas angle. And Metro newspaper have a failure of leadership. Boris once again with that familiar expression of regret and a picture of a poster which used to be up on all the bus shelters and so on not so long ago. Look her in the eyes and tell her you never bend the rules. Well, Boris, of course, is unable to do that. The Daily Star has gone with, I think, a fairly predictable angle, 50 Shades of Grey. I have been waiting for that one for some time. Bozo takes a spanking in brutal report, humiliated as cops probe 300 party pics. I assume that means a number of party pics rather than done in the style of a Spartan army defending their city from the advancing Persians. He's accused of a lack of leadership and he gets kicking nuts by former PM. I do hope that is a purely allegorical kick in the nuts. So those are the headlines. Let's take a dive into them. So, this is our first story. It's obviously the main story, Ian, which has dominated the headlines not only today, but for some weeks now. But it's total consensus now. 50 Shades of Sue Gray, as the Star has it. And this is the report we've all been waiting for. I can't help feeling it's a little bit of a damp squib. I mean, it is certainly, he's not been let off, but it doesn't land the killer blow, does it? Or is it a question of how his party react?
Were you expecting it to land the killer blow?
I was
Simon, is what I
hoping
was gonna
something, just something that wouldn't have been previously common knowledge.
It's not the complete report. I mean, I've got the headline from The Guardian. Gray finds failure of leadership at number 10 as police investigate 300 photos. These are CCTV images of people coming and going.
It's not 300 on a smartphone.
It's not, no, as far as I understand.
Like 300 selfies that Carrie's taken in her pocket without this.
More than 300 photos and 500 pages of documents. I mean, he's lost, well, unless you're living in a cave, everybody, and I always say that, and I always think, I wonder what Osama bin Laden, did he not keep up generally? But anyway...
he used to get the Daily Telegraph and they'd arrive in batches of 7, but he was so disciplined he would read them in order.
Right. Would he wait 24 hours?
The whole through the week, yeah, absolutely.
He had a bit of time on his hands. I mean, as you said, I don't think this is not the thing that's going to kill him.
It's not finally swept the rug under him, is it?
No, but it's one of the many things that should. I mean, I've had discussions with you in the past about Boris Johnson being unfit to be Prime Minister. I think this is just more evidence that that is the case. He's lost Andrew Mitchell, who was a big supporter of Boris Johnson over the last 25 years.
Wasn't he the one who was insulted by the police when he was trying to leave with his bicycle?
Yes. What gets me is they said they felt let down by Boris Johnson. I mean, is there anyone on earth who he's met who has not been let down by Boris Johnson?
Well, you know, Carrie is still there by his side. What do you think, Nick?
Well, I read it. I think he should be more worried about 50 Shades of May, because Theresa May was the most scathing. Thank you very much. Just thought of it.
She was good.
She was the most scathing because in PMQ she said either the Prime Minister hasn't read the rules, doesn't understand them, or doesn't think they apply to number 10. Which was it? And it was this very icy which was it, which was very brutal.
A very icy which was it?
Exactly. But the actual report is a bit of a nothing burger, or at very least a mini sausage roll, Simon, because there's not much in it. I read it. My takeaways were not exactly revelations. Some unfortunate things happened. It was a difficult and complicated time. Boris's number 10 office is not that well organised, believe it or not. And some people in government drink a bit too much. Those are my main takeaways.
Well, there was one paragraph which quite a few people shared. I wonder what you think about this, Ian, where it says that it generally deplores the idea that alcohol should find its way into a place of work as a matter of principle, not just at number 10.
As a comedian,
we have to dispute that, don't we?
I only play gigs in dry comedy clubs. I mean, this was an interesting thing. This is an interesting thing. Johnson appeared to have staved off an immediate challenge by pledging a shake-up of his Downing Street operation. This is what you mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, does anyone think that this wouldn't have happened if the Downing Street operation was not like that?
His constant refrain, which is quite clever in a way, I suppose tactically, is to sort of go, well, I will be looking into this. This is disgraceful, as if he's been utterly oblivious to it the whole time. I've heard a couple of weeks, well, about a week ago, there were rumours that people were being bullied and that there was quite serious coercion going on. That, you know, the whip was like really threatening that people would have the budget for their schools removed and so on if they didn't vote the right way. And he was told about this and he went, well, I've seen nothing. They are accusing you of this. It's you they're telling you.
Well, he was talking about the whip's office, wasn't he? And Prime Ministers do have deniability when it comes to the whip's office. They don't want to know what they're going on about.
They're at number 12, aren't they?
I think we can agree, though, can't we,
Yeah.
that Boris Johnson is not going to leave willingly. He's going to be dragged out of Downing Street, clinging onto the railings. You know, like Sonny Corleone in The Godfather, where he beats up the guy who beats up his sister, and he's got hold of the railings and Sonny. I mean, that is the only way that Boris Johnson is leaving.
Well, he finally gets gunned down at some sort of checkpoint crossing into New Jersey or something.
I don't want to take that analogy any further, but I understand the point you're making,
Speaking of film analogies, you reminded me of the bit in Wolf of Wall Street where the butler's having a massive party in their house. Then they come in, he suddenly turns around and goes, oh, my God, this is terrible. That's what you're saying Boris is essentially doing.
Well, it's Casablanca, isn't it? I cannot believe gambling is taking place on these premises.
Jess Phillips
it's a well-established trope.
She asked him whether he was at the party and said, you surely don't need the police to tell you that. And, of course, he battered her straight back. But after the 10th question asking the same thing, do you think maybe they try a different tack?
Well, there was one which... The low point for me, and I have to confess I didn't see it, this has only been in the Prime Minister's question time, was when he took the opportunity to criticise Keir Starmer for defending Jimmy Savile, which that seems to just sort of not acknowledge the legal, as if that was something that Starmer had got. Oh, can I do him? I always hate it.
Drug taking on the Labour front benches as well. He talked about that as well. I mean, Starmer, I thought was great today, and I haven't always said that about the Labour leadership, but he did 6 minutes. And you know what? The Tory backbenchers were ashamed, and so they should be, because they're the ones not only who got him in, but who are keeping him.
But Starmer still wasn't as harsh as Theresa May. So.
No. Well, also that is what we'll tell. Well, I mean, yeah, it's obviously up for dispute. But I think May's it's always your enemies. But that's what they say, isn't it? Your rivals are opposite, but your enemies are behind you. I think it's likely that a Tory will land the killer blow in this case. If it was something more like the Westland helicopter affair, then you need the opposition to explain to the public what's gone wrong. Yeah. Whereas when it's just so obviously like a shambles of this kind, it's much more to do with the conviction that the party still has that he's the best man to lead them into the next election. And that's...
Yeah, can I add one thing for the GB viewers who are kind of sick of Boris bashing? I still don't care about much. I don't care about the birthday cake, right?
Fair enough.
I don't care about the parties on their own. I do care about the appalling rules and the radical detachment of the elites from the people. But I still maintain that Boris is ultimately a small part of that, and a relatively benign figure given some of the possible alternatives.
You see it essentially, don't you? I've heard you say this, and I think it's a valid point, that what we are seeing is a demonstration, if one were needed, that the rules were ridiculous, that they made no sense, they were incoherent. Because, yes, on the one hand, we're being told, you know, people stayed at home and weren't allowed to visit dying relatives. But on the other hand, you're saying a group of people who just spent all day in an airless, unventilated office then brought in some wine and suddenly they're in... This is like a hanging offence. It's obviously nonsense.
Yes, the rules, not the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is annoying.
No, Ian's in.
Sorry.
No, I've heard this argument, and I see why people make this argument. I have also a little bit of sympathy that the rules were a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
That he was the one who made them.
Oh, yeah.
And
No, it's not an excuse.
why this is important.
Of course.
So it's not an excuse, I'm saying.
No, it's not an excuse.
Bring it up.
It's a twisting of the frame, isn't it?
Look,
really?
the hypocrisy is infuriating, but the rules themselves are still the focal point for me.
I don't think Nick is saying let him off the hook.
No,
anyway,
no.
Sajid Javid, talking of hooks, is set to reverse... I don't know what that means. If you say it with enough confidence and aplomb, you get away with that.
Still makes no sense.
Talking of hooks, Sajid Javid is set to reverse the vaccine mandate. They're not done with hooks, are they, the needles? That would just alarm people even more. This has been a story we've been following for some time. Nick, the NHS staff, it's an interesting, maybe just the statistical artifact, maybe, who knows what it is culturally, but there is an awful lot of vaccine hesitancy within the NHS staff, which is interesting, but perhaps not something we should, unless we go down the Joe Rogan route of becoming fully sceptical. But the government have been threatening them with a sack en masse for some time, and it's been obviously building, and it's obviously created an impasse which has had a predictable result.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you mentioned that the scepticism but this is 80,000 workers who have obviously now, not all of them have seen what's going on because they're auxiliary workers and so on, but many of them have seen the results of the vaccines and the results of COVID, and they're making their choice. So it's an interesting question. But yes, it was never really going to happen, one felt, but this is still good news to me. I think the final blow, at least in terms of public perception, was that video from Dr. Steve James, where he very eloquently and sensibly laid out his scepticism about this. It's a horrible thing to do after we've praised the NHS. It's a bullying thing to do. I think we're seeing in Canada with the truckers and with the NHS, you can't just bully the people who keep the country going. The sad thing is we've already lost 40,000 care workers, but I'm glad that they've reversed this now. It should have been done earlier, but I'm glad it's happened.
Just to clarify, essentially there is no mandate. There will be continued encouragement for NHS workers to get vaccinated, but their jobs are not at risk if they decide not to.
That is pretty much what they're saying.
Yeah, and it has come off the back of this. Has it officially? I think
officially it's to do with Delta was more severe. This was done back in autumn. Now we've changed. I'm just saying in public perception, that video is important.
What do you think, Ian?
Well, I mean, they started this. I remember. You know what? I don't even know when it happened because the last 2 years, time is a very elastic concept.
Yeah.
But at some point,
I think it was post-Christmas.
It was autumn.
Yeah. I mean, they've had this. They've tried to do this for a while. I think it was mainly to force people, not force people, to encourage people.
Yeah.
Well, all right, coerce is another word, but they're not going to coerce them, aren't they? I don't think people should be forced or coerced to get the vaccine. But I think if you work in a care home and I believe the evidence that you are slightly more likely to give someone COVID if you're not vaccinated than you are vaccinated, then you are putting people at risk, are you not?
I think there are a number of issues, aren't there? One of them is how many of these people have actually already had the virus and they think they have some immunity from that. And there's plenty of evidence that you have as much immunity
for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks.
Well, it works pretty much the same way that the vaccine does, doesn't it? That's what a vaccine is.
I don't know. I actually don't know. The scientific community in the main would say that you're less infectious with the vaccine than without. So then, if you agree with that, you're basically more dangerous to old people who are in the care homes. And we've killed quite a few of them as it is.
We have already.
Can I just come back on that? Because what's also dangerous to people in care homes is if you threaten 40,000 workers and they don't want to get the vaccine, they leave. That's also a big problem.
I didn't agree with that.
No,
I didn't agree with that. But I think that people should get the. I think that. But yeah,
it must be partly. Have to be threatened. It must be a number of factors. It must be partly if you're more likely to be a channel, a conduit for the virus, whether or not you've had it, if you've been vaccinated versus if you have natural antibodies from having caught it and endured it.
And I don't know the difference.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? But it's not. I mean, there might be people sitting at home going, "Well, why are you even on the show?" You know, because. But I will say this in our defence, not you, but all of us. You know, we all sit here and we don't know the exact difference. But part of the reason for that is those figures are almost impossible to come by. Any kind of really clarified. I mean, some of these things about vaccine scepticism, for instance, the Joe Rogan thing, which we'll come on to later on, he has had people on. There was a clip that CNN was sharing on their YouTube channel, and they were laughing at Rogan for this, but I think actually he behaved honourably. He challenged a CNN medical correspondent, and he said, if you're a young child, I think age 5 to 8, you are more likely to develop, I think, myocarditis, a heart murmur or whatever, from getting the vaccine than you are from getting the virus. And the CNN guy says, no, that's not right. And then he goes, pull it up, whatever his name is, the producer he has. Jamie, right? And he's got it on the screen. And it turns out CNN guy is right. The statistics suggest quite strongly that it's about 8 times more likely that if you get COVID as a child, you will have heart murmurs afterwards than if you get the vaccine. In both cases, it's very low. It's like 500 cases in a million, which is what, like 2 in 1,000 something? No, 1 in 2,000. So it's really unlikely anyway. But my point is this, that was a hard number. That got settled then and there. This issue about whether or not the vaccine provides better immunity than having caught the thing, it just seems to be vanishingly rare. Almost, it's an absolute unicorn. You can't get hold of it.
If you believe, sorry, Nick, if you believe that it is more likely that you infect someone without a vaccine, then it would follow that you'd want people to get vaccines. And I think that's a perfectly valid view to have.
Of course it is, but you've got to have the number. You haven't got the numbers. If you don't give them the number...
But my point, can I just say my point? It's so simple. My point is simply, you're saying it's a risk to all people if unvaccinated workers are treating them. I'm simply saying that a bigger risk to them might be if there aren't social care workers and they don't have anyone treating them, if there's no care. That's all, which is the result of
you're talking about two different things. You're talking about the government and you're talking about the moral responsibility of somebody who works in the care industry. But, they're entitled to look after themselves as well. Well, that's the end of part one, ladies and gentlemen. We have probably battled through the thickets of moral questioning to a greater degree than is coming up in part two. But there are adverts now. After that, we've got Burglars, the endless Joe Rogan saga once again, and more of those Canadian truckers. I'll see you very shortly. Thank you.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview, channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Dan Wootton, join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
And welcome back to Headliners. With me are guests Nick Dixon and Ian Stone. Dixon and Stone, you sound like a very plausible detective duo from the 70s.
I'd have said Stone and Dixon, but
Stone and Dixon, yeah.
That's not how it's
That would have been
rhythm,
an endless argument with your agents, and eventually would have cost you both the contract. And
Dixon of Dock Green. It has to be me
Dixon
first.
of Dock Green. Is there a Stone? Who's the greatest Stone in TV drama?
Do you know, I'm Andy Stone. Wasn't there an Andy Stone who was in The Untouchables? That's probably
nice.
the nearest I've got.
Blimey, that is a clash of cultures. Dixon and Dock Green leads The Untouchables. OK, up first in this section from Tuesday's Guardian, this is a rather troubling case involving a rape allegation, which was then found to be false, but the finding of the falsity of the rape allegation has now been overturned. It's kind of like a double twist, right?
Well, a UK woman was accused of making up Cyprus gang rape claims, has her conviction quashed because she came to this... she said that she was gang raped by 12 young Israeli guys, and the case ended up convicting her of fabricating the case. She ended up spending 4 weeks in a Cyprus prison, in a Nicosia prison, and now they've overturned it.
It's not a laughing matter, but still.
It isn't. And the island's Supreme Court overturned the conviction. And I guess this goes to the heart of women wanting to come forward with rape allegations and what can happen to them, because she may have been... she may have been completely honest with what she was saying, and they just not only did they not believe her, she ended up going to jail, and that's not going to encourage women to go forward.
No, of course it's not. But it feels to me like there's something that's maybe not coming out in the case that's maybe unspoken. Like for a start, 12 Israeli guys. Are they in some kind of? Are they like a unit of some sort?
You know what? I've read various things on the internet which I don't particularly want to say on live TV, but. What I did read was Dennis McShane in The Independent saying that there are geopolitical reasons why this is going on.
Yeah.
Israel wants to supply energy to Greece and Cyprus, and so nobody wants to upset the apple carts. This is going on way above the pay grade.
That's exactly what I was saying. It feels like it...
But it's incredibly sad that a young woman's life has been blighted by geopolitics. I mean, I guess she's not the only one, but that is what seems to have gone on here. But the case has been overturned, and rights groups, a legal aid group, Justice Abroad, coordinated appeal against the conviction, saying that this is a watershed moment.
Can I just check? Did she do time, or was she? Was it like a suspended sentence?
Suspended 4-month sentence for fomenting public mischief. Slightly odd sounding.
So she had a suspended sentence, but she'd already done a certain amount of time in jail waiting for the case.
She did 4 weeks.
That was waiting for the case to come up, though, right?
To come up. Yeah. And she's traumatised now. She's back in Britain, and she says she can't go out. And it's I think it's an awful case all round.
It does. This is the element of it that is like unsettling. Is that sense that it would have been done for like political reasons.
Well, now those kids are home. They can't be tried in Cyprus, and they're not going back to Cyprus anytime soon on holiday, are they? Let's be fair.
Have you heard anything?
Very little to add. I just think she has been treated terribly, and we should probably invade Cyprus.
We used to go there quite regularly, didn't we, when we were entertaining the troops? We used to pop over.
I did it a couple. There was a decompression unit, wasn't there? Yeah,
yes. Where soldiers could, for the soldiers.
Yeah. It was interesting as well. You would sit by the pool for days on end sometimes, just waiting, and then almost like a scramble signal would come in.
I never had to scramble.
You didn't get
that? We used to run onto the stage in 10 minutes.
Well, you got about 3 hours notice as a rule. They brought some lads back, and they all had that 1,000-yard stare. The Independent now, and I've got to say there's a certain amount of schadenfreude in hearing that Jacinda Ardern, who is the archangel of the Southern Hemisphere, is suddenly not doing so well in the polls.
No, terrible. COVID backlash sees New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern slump in polls. There it is. And yes, she is basically she's gone down from an approval score of positive 55 to just 15. And people are saying it's amid criticism of her government's strict COVID-19 response.
15?
Yep, 15, not looking good.
That's lower than Biden.
It's low. It's the lowest she...
It's above Boris.
It's above Boris still, just about. We'll wait for the report. But it's a similar poll in January. It was said it was the lowest since 2017 for her, though she's still predicted to win in the 2023 election at the current level. But it's not...
What, at 15?
Well, it's... the one...
I suppose it's her personal rating.
The one from the January poll, which might have been slightly different. But anyway, they're saying she'll still win, but... I mean, look, there's this growing rebellion against all these people who've, imposed all these rules. We've got the truckers, we've got the Plan B rebellion here. I just think it's part of this big theme. A very generous comparison would be the Churchill one, that the person that's been in charge in an emergency, you don't really want to see their face after. That's very generous. It could have more to do with the absurd rules. I mean, some of the things, the 24-day isolation over Omicron was ridiculous. The passport scandal for citizens that Dan Wootton's covered a lot on this channel. And remember, she did a press conference where she said you're now allowed to urinate in your friend's house, presumably in the right room with permission. But you know what I mean? That for that to be a real thing.
It's very interesting. Trudeau is the obvious corollary as well. It's very much how these things are reported, because you can get the impression, and to a degree Australia as well, although they're Scott Morrison there, they've had a similarly sort of tyrannical rules they've imposed.
In some states.
But Morrison is very much different from Ardern, right? All I'm saying is they're very different personalities. But you can get the impression, depending on what you watch or what you read, that their people are grateful to them and on the point of canonising them, for having protected and saved their island. It's almost like a St. Patrick driving the snakes out. Or suddenly it turns out they're driven almost insane by this.
I imagine it's somewhere in between in most of these
there'll be
countries.
different people.
I should point out that at the end of the crib notes that we do get, it does say that they've had 52 deaths with coronavirus.
I know.
Which is a tiny number, considering we've had whatever it is, 165,000. I'm not disputing that perhaps people are getting a bit tired of it, and it certainly seems like that from her personal ratings. And also that the way that you react at the beginning of a pandemic and the way that you govern might not be suitable for 2 years into a pandemic as well. But there's no doubt that she has saved quite a lot of her population, whereas other countries haven't.
Yeah, but and Churchill arguably didn't either. I mean, there is...
But how would you feel, Ian, living in a country where the leader tells you whether you can urinate in a friend's house or not? Does that not go over the line a little bit for you?
No, I always, whenever I go to a friend's house, I wait for like a say-so from Boris Johnson. There's a call that comes in.
Can I use the yucca plant?
It seems ridiculous. Of course it seems ridiculous, but maybe... Do you know what? Maybe that worked for the first 6 months. We all had those rules, didn't we?
The big kind of issue that we're all confronting as we come out of this now, isn't it, is the degree to which governments are willing to embrace authoritarian measures. China has done very well. I mean, just in terms of total numbers, and you just go, well, is that worth it? Is that what they're all going to switch to, or are we all going to be surveilled? And...
I can see that people would be a bit upset. 95% of the country's adults are fully vaccinated in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And what they told us was... when you're all fully vaccinated, that's a way out.
We have to move on. We have another story now, and this is about a female, but this is a happier story, I guess. This is certainly a happier story for the feminism. We have a female banker who has taken a bank, the BNP Paribas, to court for sort of not so much sexual harassment as belittling, I think, isn't it? Is that right? And she's won a couple of million.
First of all, thank you for pronouncing Paribas, because I would have put the S on the end. But now,
I've done a number of corporates for the financial sector.
Okay.
So
the French bank BNP Paribas was sued by Stacey Macken, who's 50 years old, she was shouted down, constantly shouted down by male colleagues with the catchphrase, "Not now, Stacey." And also, they all got drunk one day and they went out and they left a witch's hat on her desk. She was earning less than the
2
men.
million seems a bit scrawny for this kind of
I know
treatment.
you're joking about this, but I mean, those constant microaggressions, and I know that people on GBNews might hear the phrase microaggression.
When I first
think,
saw you on
please.
stage in Tufnell Park in 1995, I never thought the day would come.
I'm just saying that, you know what? I mean, well, I don't want to bring up the Jew thing, but as we're doing that, you do feel those things, and sometimes people don't notice what's going on. There is no doubt in this bank, because the tribunal agreed that there was a culture going on that belittled her, sexism, and she took 2 million quid in compensation.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that she did. I mean, the fact that she was earning less than the men, well, she may well have asked for less than the men, or she may well have not asked for more when she was in the interview. I don't think that's clear cut. But some of the stuff that went on, and that not now, Stacey, no one should have to work in an environment like that.
We have, though, haven't we? Most of our lives.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean it's right, though, does it?
No, we wouldn't be likely to sue successfully, would we? I don't know. What do you think, Nick?
Well, it's tough for me because I want to side with men, but not with the French. So I'm torn. I'm really torn on this one. But no, I hate bullying. Look,
Stacey sounds a bit American, though. But,
I thought it was like an Australian thing, not now, Stacey. But
if you say bullying, doesn't that?
That's better than microaggression. When I say bullying, I think because I think it is bullying. And look, I hate workplace bullying. I'm bullied here by the other comedians. Andrew Doyle bullies me. The thing is, this is, but then
now, Nick.
It does sound a bit, Wolf of Wall Street, but not in a good way. And the witch's hat was a bit.
Lupin du Palais Central. Isn't it Lupin?
No idea what happened there.
I went to a comprehensive school. I didn't get any of that. But
Lupin might be a rabbit. I don't know. I get confused.
But the thing is that you're sort of implying, yes, she's been bullied, but she's earned 2 million quid out of it.
Yeah.
So that's the argument. Maybe it was worth.
I think the 2 million quid is probably. This would be just a guess. I have no legal training in the last 30 years, but I suspect it is. No, I suspect it's what would they call it? Punitive. I suspect what they're trying to do is make it clear that this kind of thing is not going to be tolerated.
Well, the bonuses. And BNP she received less bonuses as well. I mean, her male peer was paid more than 167,000. She got 33 grand. But it is a little punitive as well because,
I suspect they don't. I suspect there is a warning to the culture that you need to change. And Paribas they can take 2 million on the chin, but they will.
They can find it down the back of the sofa.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
You know what? At least change the culture a little bit.
The Guardian have a story about a rather idyllic-sounding work-life balance scenario, which maybe is a little bit more functional than the BNP Paribas. What's this one, Nick?
Yes, Belgian civil servants given legal right to disconnect from work. So they'll no longer have to answer emails or phone calls out of office hours. It's giving them the right to disconnect. So so it's interesting. I mean, at first you hear it, you think, it's a sort of socialist European idea. It did remind me of Dominic... Sorry, I just throw that into wind up.
I don't.
I did... well, it's my little bit of the show. It did... it reminded me also of Cummings saying that there's an obsession with work-life balance. Yeah. In the cabinet, when actually people should just be working hard. So it's that question, should they work? It does allow for exceptional reasons. So I suppose COVID might have been an emergency. But yeah, look, it seems like a reasonable idea in some ways. I
think full stop, it's a reasonable idea. You should be allowed to do that. I think it's a huge blight on modern life that almost anyone, not just in the government, in the service sector. My wife works in PR. Her phone rings at 9 o'clock on a Sunday evening quite frequently.
I even had a job once.
It's ridiculous.
I worked in a start-up once. The boss was messaging you on the weekends and the evenings. Yeah, the question is, because I consulted my civil service contact, the question is, should it be a law or should it just come from management, strong management and a good culture? You know what I mean? And then you get this... They're also talking about a 4-day... Maybe it should... Well, some people are saying they only want to work... They want to work 2 days or more from home. Then you have all the questions. And if this becomes law and regulation, is it unfair for self-employed people or have they deliberately taken another path?
Well, one of the good things about being self-employed is you can choose to try and get ahead. In your 20s and 30s, you've got lots of energy, and then you can start to ease off a little bit later in life. That's supposed to be the idea,
I forgot to try in my 20s and 30s.
I think there is an argument to be made that if you want to be able to get ahead, you should be able to have the option of, doing the extra hours. But then, of course... It just spreads, doesn't it? And then everyone needs to do the extra hours just to keep their job.
I mean, this is just to protect people from burnout, right? Isn't that the point? I mean, I can see what you're saying about whether they make it law or whether they just have a sort of workplace culture where you don't have to pick up the phone to your boss after 7 o'clock at night. I mean, as comedians, we do have trouble switching off on occasion, don't we? But I just don't make jokes between, unfortunately, it's between 11 and 12.
Very few people call us before 6 p.m.
Well, there is that as well, but we can take calls at any time, can't we?
We have to go to a break, folks. Coming up, we've got catfishing, if you've ever wondered what that is. I only learned very recently. Diabetes, I've known about that for a while. And Chinese bakers on the spectrum, so don't go anywhere. Buy these goods and services. See you shortly.
Evening. Felt cold in the wind today, but tomorrow, although still windy, will be an awful lot milder. The wind's still pretty lively across northern Scotland, where, of course, we had all the storm damage through the weekend. That storm system's cleared away. High pressure is trying to build in, but we've got these weather fronts toppling their way in from the northwest, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland this evening, and trickling into Northern England and North Wales, and eventually some of that rain turning up across the Midlands and maybe South Wales, but it'll be fairly light and patchy. Quite a misty, murky night as well, with a lot of low cloud. Turning quite chilly out there this evening, but by dawn, temperatures ticking back up to 7 or 8 Celsius, so a pretty mild start. A grey start as well. A lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle for northwest England and Wales, and at times for Northern Ireland during Tuesday. It will be windy, especially in that northeastern corner. Not as windy as the weekend, but of course, because we're in the recovery situation here, any winds could cause some further disruption. So we do have a yellow warning in place. Some sunny spells in the northeast, temperatures well above average, 11, 12, maybe 13 Celsius. Through tomorrow evening, we'll see some further outbreaks of rain and drizzle across North Wales, Northern Ireland, further showers in the far northeast where the winds will be easing down, generally staying fairly cloudy. So again, most places frost-free as we head into Wednesday. But Wednesday, again, predominantly cloudy, rain at times for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, not as windy in the far northeast, just a few showers here. Some breaks in the south in the clouds could reveal a bit of sunshine, and it will be very mild again. Temperatures once more for the vast majority, double figures, 11 in Hull, 10 in Cardiff, maybe 11 or 10 in the southwest of England as well. So very mild for the next couple of days. That mild air hangs on Thursday, but a cold front sweeps through, bringing a much colder feel by Friday.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get straight into it. From Tuesday's Daily Mail, police only solve 1 in 20 burglaries. That sounds pathetic, Ian. Is that an accurate statistic?
It's not great. Well, I don't know if it's an accurate statistic. It's in the Daily Mail.
It is burglaries, though, right? I've got that right.
It is burglaries. I think... I mean, it says burglars are escaping justice. Burglars is an interesting word. Burglars are escaping justice.
You always find yourself saying burglarised. I say that.
They're escaping justice with as little as 5% of their crimes ever reaching court, new data suggests. I looked up the numbers of police. In 2021, last year, there was 160,000. There were 172,000 in 2010. So they've lost 12,000 police. That must surely make a bit
of it, though, shouldn't it? But it isn't a good sign.
No, it isn't a good sign.
Part of the thing. Half as many cases. I wonder if they've decided they're not worth pursuing because they are so hard to get anywhere with.
Well, that's what they said, that there was they were closed without a suspect identified. What got me, I was reading this, forces in Greater Manchester, Bedfordshire and Northamptonshire all publicly pledged to send an officer to every burglary in a bid to tackle the number of unsolved crimes. And I thought, what, they don't already? I mean, do they have to? They essentially triage the phone calls as they come in, going, well, how valuable was the stuff? And how much
I've been triaged. Have you not? I've been. We'll have someone round there on Thursday. There's no effort at all to solve them normally. But one thing,
such an invasive.
Have you been burgled, Nick?
No, I have had my phone nicked on the street outside my house, and nothing happened. Didn't even send. Can't get through. No email. Nothing at all.
I've been burgled.
Well, I think
have a phone, 4 times in the time that I lived in London, and it was always in the more. It was always when I was poorer. There's this image of burglary that if you ever see it on like the TV, it's like the middle-class house and the lady's lost her jewellery. It's never that. It's
poor people robbing other
people. And they nick a video player that's worth 10 quid now if you're lucky, because nobody has video anymore.
It's just such a grim statistic, the fact that 95% of burglaries don't get solved. And you think, my God, these poor people who are suffering and who lose what little stuff they might have.
I've got this crazy idea. Why can't police show up at your house in a few minutes like an Uber, right? It's a more violent version of Uber. I mean, I already said this last night on Free Speech Nation, so I won't improve on that scathing satire. But basically, why can't they do it? Here, you've talked about the resources. Here it's saying there's more police officers than at almost any point in the last 20 years. So, why can't they do it?
The thing with Uber is it is a private company, but maybe that is what we should be doing. Go back to like the old, the pre-Bow Street Runner.
Well, in an anarchist system, we'd have privatised security. We wouldn't have police. But
I think certainly a rating, a star rating, after they've visited the house wouldn't be bad.
How was this thwarted burglary for you?
Remember that? I remember being taught about the fire brigade before there was a national fire brigade. It was always basically the fire trucks were run by the insurance companies, and they would come and check whether you had your plate screwed on over the fireplace.
That's how Crassus made all his money in ancient Rome, of course. He owned the fire department and said, well, if you want me to put the fire out, you have to give me the building.
As in Richard Croesus, that guy. That was how he made it. Fantastic protection racket. This next one, we've been foreshadowing it, I should say, a couple of times already. This is Joe Rogan, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, and Spotify, and whether or not they have a responsibility to monitor and arguably, some would say, censor the podcast he's putting out. What do you think?
Yes, well, the updated part was that Joe Rogan's made a statement in a video today. And the headline The Sun have is Joe Rogan apologises over Spotify row. There you go. But slams it as out-of-control juggernaut. Ridiculous headline. He didn't slam his own $100 million podcast. He merely said the whole thing's got much more out of control than I really... I started as a small podcast. Now I have a much bigger responsibility. It was a great summary from Rogan. He essentially said, and this is the key takeaway, he said... who can decide what's... Well, I'm paraphrasing, but who can decide what's misinformation? That's the key point to me, because, until recently we were told the lab leak theory, and he brought this up. The Wuhan lab leak theory was dangerous misinformation. Second later, it's almost certain truth.
Well-established Twitter account called Zero Hedge. Very interesting Twitter account, like mainly financial tips, but also occasionally sort of political and... governmental investigations were banned immediately just for suggesting that the lab leak hypothesis was plausible.
Exactly. So this is the whole problem with the misinformation argument to me. People say, it's misinformation. Well, it's one man's misinformation. Today's misinformation is tomorrow's truth. So that's basically it.
Not always.
Well, in some cases. And my other, just to finish on the Rogan thing, he also said he's going to make more effort to put consecutive guests with balance. He'll have one guest on one side. The next episode, he'll try and have the opposite view. And he accepted that Spotify were going to put warnings on some episodes like this might have, information that goes against the consensus. I don't approve of that because I think who's deciding the consensus, but he allowed that concession.
Bit of balance. What do you think, Ian?
Should all views be treated equally? Is my question about this. Yes. If
well, what about?
Well, no. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. If there was someone, if we were talking about the Holocaust on this show, and there was a Holocaust tonight, do you think they should be given equal time?
Well,
I don't think you do.
Do you know Dr. Malone, who he had on, which is obviously the main guy?
Robert Malone, a virologist who claims to be one of the architects of mRNA tech. I mean, it depends.
He has 9 patents on it, so
well,
it's a straw man.
You can't say claims. I mean, you're being the Holocaust denier here. He is one of the architects of mRNA tech.
Yeah, he has
that is not in dispute.
Partly, all right. I would say partly.
Well, the words one of covers that.
Okay, he claimed people were being hypnotised into accepting vaccinations and masks.
No,
they took that. No, I've never seen Joe Rogan, and I'm talking about. I'm talking about the balance issue here. No.
Sorry.
Okay.
It sounds to me like you haven't listened to him and you're taking it second-hand information.
No, I
haven't.
Talking
about mass formation hypnosis is a theory of the public get brainwashed into a certain mode of thinking.
Well, he's talking very specifically about the kind of psychological condition to which the people of Nazi Germany fell prey in the build-up to the Second World War.
Do you feel like you've been hypnotised into wearing a mask or vaccine?
Ian, people in Germany didn't feel like they'd been hypnotised. They all believed that they were...
See, I object. Hang on a minute. I object to stuff. Sorry, Nick, but when he's bringing up Nazi Germany in this way, I know I did bring up Holocaust denial.
You did.
But I agree. But I'm saying that are all views equal?
That's my point. Dr. Malone is not some nutcase off the street. He's not David Icke. He's not like what's his name? Corbyn's brother, Piers Corbyn. He is a really eminent scientist, very, very measured, intelligent, well-referenced 3-hour conversation he had with Rogan, which you can still hear. It's not on YouTube, though. His Twitter account has been banned. And he said nothing in it that amounted to, if I were you, I wouldn't get the vaccine. Nothing that amounted to that. Nothing that you could read or hear in that way. He simply emphasised that there were aspects to the vaccine that were unknown, there were aspects that were at risk, but also, much more importantly, that Reuters Thompson, who had been hired as fact-checkers, had all kinds of potentially undermining links.
There are so many scientists on the other side who would disagree with him. Now, just because
he can get one of those, we can hear them.
I'm not. Yeah, there are.
and they're on Joe Rogan's podcast on other episodes.
Yeah, look.
He's had the guy from CNN.
I've never listened to Joe Rogan's podcast, so I can't really make a judgment on this.
Have you ever listened to Neil Young?
Do you know what? I'm not a massive fan of Neil Young, if I'm honest.
I'm a huge fan of both.
If we lose Art Garfunkel as well, I'm going to
Did you know that Neil Young launched a really serious and sustained campaign against genetically modified food a few years ago, which is at least against the science, the consensus of science, as Joe Rogan's views on vaccine?
Yeah, but Neil Young does not have a podcast on Spotify that's listened by.
He does have a platform.
Well, he doesn't have any music on it anymore.
Now, on to a big story coming out of North America. Canadian truckers, they are massing. It's a convoy. It's a rather romantic image when seen from a helicopter, but it must keep getting a bit sticky and smelly on the ground.
Is it romantic?
I believe. Is this your story? Even though I'd love to talk about it, but go on.
We can both talk about it. I mean, look, there is essentially it's a convoy, freedom of convoy is what they call it, of trucks. I do have a mistrust of anyone who calls it a freedom convoy. This freedom thing, I'm finding a bit much. But anyway, the truckers say there is no end date in sight and plan to stay in the capital for as long as it takes. And then this vaccine mandate that they're complaining about, the industry, it's brought in on January the 15th, which means that unvaccinated Canadian drivers returning to their homeland must take a COVID test before crossing the US-Canada border and quarantine on arrival. I have limited sympathy for them, I'll be honest with you. I think if you're travelling from another country, especially a country with quite as much COVID as America, maybe there should be some sort of quarantine for you. And if you're not prepared to take the vaccine, well then,
you have to quarantine, that means you can't do it, doesn't it? You can't be quarantined. It's not like an annual holiday. This is their job. How can they be quarantined?
Well, then get the vaccine.
How can an old school lefty not sympathise with the workers of Canada, the salt of the earth of Canada?
I said I have limited sympathy. No sympathy. I have limited sympathy with them.
It's very sad to hear because you could win these people back, but you've alienated them. Not you specifically, Ian, but it's kind of you. But,
well, the thing is, Canadian truckers were always the biggest part of my fan base as well. So I've really made a mistake there, haven't I? Really?
Look, well, and you've also allied yourself with the Daily Mail, because the Mail agenda is clear here. They talk about that these people desecrating the tomb of the unknown soldier. They talk about swastikas. So the Mail's trying to throw them under the bus. It's very similar to a video that just came out.
We're clear that the Mail thinks swastikas are a bad thing in this story.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah.
And they're trying to undermine the truckers, in my humble opinion, for satirical purposes, non-legal. The point is, this reminds me of a video that was on Twitter. It was a guy who seemed like a planted Fed type of guy. Yeah. He was holding a Confederate flag, completely covered his face, didn't know anyone. People are trying to discredit these truckers, but actually, and there was that disgusting cartoon in the Toronto Sun where it said fascism on the side of the trucks. It was a very poor satire of calling the truckers fascists. It's like, if you're rebelling against an authoritarian, overreaching government mandate, that's almost a little opposite of fascism.
Yeah,
so it's absurd. This is a great thing. It's a fight back for people. It's the government running scared, literally, in Trudeau's case, hiding in a bunker like bin Laden. And it's the people fighting back.
I'm not a massive fan of Trudeau. I've got to be honest with you. I mean, he was calling the truckers racist, and this is a guy, obviously, who's black-faced.
Yeah,
he's
an odd character, isn't he? He gives me the creeps. Like,
he's another groomed by the WEF, neoliberal globalist type.
Do we think he is the young Castro? What do you think of that theory?
I hadn't heard
the side-by-side photos. His mother was definitely friendly with Castro. It's just whether the dates match.
Oh, you mean literally? You mean literally?
Yeah. He could be a young Castro.
And that would be why he's against the truckers, or
well,
is
that might be why he's an authoritarian communist tyrant? In you know.
Well, not according to my friends who live in Canada, by the way, who quite like him.
Yeah.
Well,
it's always tricky when you're separated by an ocean. Right, rent for children. This is finally we get to a story with some application to my own home life. Children who insist on living with us into their 20s. There's been a discussion. I think this is more of an online discussion format than a newspaper. Nick, have you got this one?
Yeah, go on, take it.
I don't mind. I don't mind. They all say in. This. You know, I didn't
trust me more. You say.
Yes. Well, yeah. It's basically a parent said they were going to charge, or they're asking what's a reasonable amount to charge their child in rent. You know, 21-year-old son who wanted to save some money moving back into the house. And people had various views. One said none. They didn't ask to be born. Powerful argument there, quite hard to...
He's had his chance to reverse the process right now, though, isn't he?
Well, that's the question. I mean, you know, what do you think? I mean, in principle, it'd be nice for him to learn some discipline. Then again, the boomers do have all the money. Well, maybe they're not boomers, but you know what I mean? So
it's very hard to find a one-size-fits-all solution, isn't it, to be honest, in this situation?
It's very hard. It's impossible. It depends how much money you've got. I give... My kids live away, and I give them money.
How old are your kids now?
23 and 20. Yeah. And they live away, and we...
Still funding them.
Give them a bit of cash. And if they come back, sure, I could charge them, but I'd have to give them the money to pay me. Yeah. So there's not much point.
It's very much like Christmas, that, isn't it?
To a certain extent, what we've done is we sort of get them working as slaves in the house. I've got them on sort of hamster wheels in the basement, keeping the electricity going, and that seems to work.
My parents aren't currently charging me, which is nice.
They aren't?
They aren't. I'm joking, I've got my own flat,
well done,
ladies.
Mr.
Sorry.
So, the Daily Star, with our final story of the evening, is a report into penis sizes and their relationship or otherwise to feet.
Wow. NHS shares average penis size as it settles debate with its links to foot length. So, yes, much like height, the average penis size might be slightly smaller than you think, but it's apparently 5.1 inches when gently stretched. I'm not sure. When soft and gently stretched.
Soft and stretched. So that is supposed to give the... That's how you measure what it would be like when erect, is it? That's what its capacity is.
I don't know what use it is, soft and gently. I mean, it seems to be a bit...
It does fit extraordinary in the 21st century that we're still so squeamish about discussing an actual... Like, the single most... fundamental aspect of human life without which it can't carry on.
It discriminates against the grower community, though, doesn't it? But can I just also say the link to foot size bit? They've debunked that, so there's no link to foot size.
Right.
So we don't have to have any nightmares about Ronald McDonald. Anyway, what were you going to say?
What was I going to say? Well, being Jewish, I do make jokes about penis size, but they're slightly shorter than other people's.
Ah, very good. Is it not correlated with any other part of the human body that?
Well, if you're asking me, I have no idea. Why are they talking about this? Why? Because the NHS has shared this information for what?
Really unnecessary. And if they really
on the NHS website,
stretching their penises along the length of a ruler, it just seems absurd.
OK, I find the whole story a little bit odd.
What's much more interesting? Did you know about the ring finger to index finger ratio?
No.
that tells you how much testosterone you were exposed to in the womb as a man, and that has a lot of implications to just how manly you are. Anyway, you have got no time to respond to that. It's the end of the show, folks, and on that bombshell, I leave you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think I will be back here tomorrow night, so hopefully see you again at 11 p.m. Tuesday to discuss Wednesday's papers. In the meantime, enjoy today's.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show, Farage, 7